This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode 244. I'm in Sydney, Australia, on my way to Adelaide. Tim's in Brooklyn on his way to rehearsal.
Yes, I am.
And I have to say, it's
Yes.
sweltering hot here, but I
No
couldn't
shit.
couldn't resist this story about, again, how ridiculous some people are with their sports fanaticism.
Haha.
I don't know if you saw that the University of Kansas said that it had to amputate 12 people after the last game there when the temperature was -4 degrees, and it shattered the coldest record for a game in Arrowhead Stadium.
You're talking.
But
You're talking about the Chiefs. Well, but
yeah,
the thing about that is, I mean, let's be honest. The obesity levels there are really high, so there's some diabetic stuff going on there as well. I mean, that would be my sense, right?
they should have cut their heads off, if you ask me. But anyway, I mean, a frostbite, it can occur very quickly, especially in degrees like that. I just don't know why anybody would want to go. Well, the coldest game in NFL history is the 1967 championship when the Packers beat the
Ice
Cowboys.
ball, yes, the ice ball.
And the ice ball, the wind chill that day, do you want to guess it too?
It was -50 or something like that, right?
-48. You are very
Whoa!
close.
All
You've
right.
done a great job as usual with your numerical madness.
So, I mean, the thing about I do know a little about sports because I'm a boy, I kind of enjoy it a little bit, and also it allows me to infiltrate racist homicidal cop bars and get away with murder because sports stats
In a
things kind
manner
of
of
change a little
speaking,
bit.
in a manner of speaking,
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
in a manner of speaking.
So the thing is, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions. So you have all these amputations. Their championship rally ended in this like mass shooting event,
Yeah,
and
double.
you had three fans who didn't go to any of it. They just went outside and have a cigarette, and they froze to death. I mean, being a Kansas City Chiefs fan is dangerous. Turns out.
Seems that way. I mean, isn't Kansas City? I mean, no, I'm just thinking of tornadoes and hurt. No, they don't hit
Well,
there
yeah, they have all that
anyway.
shit. They absolutely have that shit. I mean, the best thing out of Kansas City, I would say Charlie Parker and
And
barbecue. I
barbecue.
mean, that's about it.
Spot on. Well, I
Exactly.
love I love this headline, and there's a site I go to often for my most ridiculous news, infomercials called Whiskey Riff,
Sure.
which, by the way, I had to have a little tipple at 10 a.m. because to me
Fun.
it's midnight everywhere.
Sure.
They're all high, quote unquote. New Orleans police chief says rats are eating marijuana confiscated as evidence. And there's a picture of a rat on its back, kind of dancing on its back. Now, we know New Orleans is pretty freaking filthy, but the rats are penetrating the evidence rooms and eating the marijuana
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
probably the crack. So, are they easier to trap when they're high? If they ate the marijuana, they're easier to trap when they're high. If they ate
Yeah,
the
because they have
crack, good
munchies.
luck.
They have munchies, and they go for the
Yeah.
bait. And that's the thing. And the thing is like those. As the whole world knows, the new generation of marijuana is fucking strong as
Oh,
fuck. And the size
too
of
much.
rats, they must be out of their fucking minds. Actually, I mean,
Well, and again, as if having rats is not bad enough. Now they're stoner rats.
oh god,
I mean, New Orleans. I always say New Orleans is like you'll smell magnolia, gardenia, night blooming jasmine right next to dirty diapers and rotten peppers. That's New Orleans. I love
oh
it.
god. Let's see what else is going on. Cole Brower, just first American woman to sail around the world solo
Whoa.
from Long Island. 30,000 miles, 130 days on a 40-foot boat, and it was streaming. So she had like basically 500,000 people that are watching it all the time, and
Right?
there was some moments where it was not looking good, like rogue waves, and she's being like, I mean, I think she might have had a hairline fracture of their rib. I mean, being tossed around like a fucking, I don't know, dice in a
You know,
fucking. I
I
mean,
mean, there are some records that I don't feel the need to break, and that
oh
might
yeah,
be one of them. Because I mean, you're just all right. So what? You did it, and you survived. Which is probably less than a 50-50 chance, and good on ya, as the Australians would say. But I still find it there are just some challenges that are just,
If
you're either a
anything,
genius or an idiot.
if anything goes wrong, you're dead. I mean
You're gone.
I mean
I
that's
do
just
not
it.
fuck with the ocean
Oh,
myself.
I know it's insane.
I just don't. Well, going from the ocean to the International Space Station, as one is
Yep,
wont to do
sure.
on the Lydian spin, that, so a 2.9 ton bundle of used batteries were tossed off the International Space Station in 2021, and they entered the Earth's atmosphere last Friday. So this pallet containing depleted batteries is
Oh,
the
great.
largest object ever tossed overboard. To me, I'm so fascinated with the International Space Station, but then again, I love the alien monster as well. So I always hope it's going to appear. 5,800-pound pallet has been drifting in Earth's orbit for around 3 years, and it just entered the atmosphere and it's plummeting straight to the surface.
Well,
And it's
that's got to burn up though, isn't it? Before it even hits.
well, it's loaded with old nickel hydrogen batteries. Yeah. And it's approximately the size of a large SUV. And it will enter the Earth's atmosphere actually in 2 to 4 years. It said, now hang on a second. I mean, lithium batteries and all this. I mean, it's just, kind of. So it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, possibly fragmenting. And who the hell knows what's going to happen with all that? Oh, the probability of debris hitting Germany is considered to be very low. And I don't know why Germany, is ahead.
Yeah. That's
it's ahead of the fray. So it will not totally burn up.
Really?
About a half a ton of fragments will likely hit the Earth. Yeah. So, and we don't know exactly where. They're just trying to figure that out.
Well, considering 70% of the planet is ocean, I guess the odds are in the favor of
Exactly.
going into the ocean.
Hey, I mean, if a woman could sail the ocean and survive, perhaps we'll survive a SUV of used batteries hitting the Earth somewhere.
What do you think the probability of someone not being able to start their car and turning to their person to their right or left, going, I think the battery's dead, and then all of a sudden that comes plummeting through a fucking windshield?
I would love that concept very much, but then again, I'm an apocalyptician, so that's all. Anyway, I don't really have much more to report.
All right, well, so the mass shooter in Maine from like last year or something, the guy.
Yeah.
Well, they when he committed suicide and. Well, they cut him open, checked out his brain, and like,
yeah,
CTE, just like what all the athletes get.
Right.
He was in the military, and he was enduring all these shockwaves from blasts nonstop.
Yes.
And so the studying of since the Iraq War, there's been a lot of studies on PTSD. Well, what they found out about that is most of the PTSD is not observational; it's physical, and the shockwaves essentially rush your blood up to your brain, and then it stretches it like when you blow up a balloon, it doesn't look the same afterwards, right? And so the blood vessels, everything in your brain are just all been stretched, and it goes back, and then you're basically brain damage at that point. And so he was just starting to act insane, hearing voices and all that stuff. But that's mainly they're concluding is because he was in the military and just endured all these shockwaves from blasts.
An interesting thought that just came after you said that is a lot of these mass shooters, whether or not they've been in the military or whether or not they have brain trauma or just trauma, which most of them do anyway, it's like they form as an incel or not their own military, because what does America do anyway? It exports fucking killers. And when we breed them ourselves, and of course, we're not going to have any gun control. That's what happens.
Well,
that's what happens.
And what's interesting about the whole gun control debate, and yes,
lobby. You mean lobby? There's not even a fucking debate.
Right. There's all that influence, but the elephant in the room that no one's talking about, no matter really what side you're on, is all these wars that we fund and participate in. You're shocked that doesn't come home.
Exactly.
I
mean, I've been talking about it my entire life. Exactly. The war is never over.
So the propaganda that goes behind going into a war is dumbing down the narrative, which is good versus evil. We're good, they're bad, and the only way to deal with it, is to kill them. And it's justified through that. So then you're surprised when someone who's emotionally challenged and socially underdeveloped, you know, goes home from work like Sarah stole my sandwich at the office, comes back with a gun, and thinks that's a reasonable solution of dealing with this shit.
Exactly. And not to defend the police, because, you know, I have my own methods of entertaining myself at their expense. But the thing is, when the whole country is a freaking bully, how could something that's below that, that's the micro, not be also a bully? And this is the same thing. When it is a when it is a country founded on murder, injustice, persecution, and prosecution, well, that's where we are today, because we have progressed as a society, not no matter how much we've progressed technologically. But anyway, that's where we're going to wrap it up, because this is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, episode 244, and we'll be back as we always are in another 7 days as I road dog. Thank you. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, and our guest today, Alvina Chamberland, a Swedish-American performance artist, writer, degree in gender studies, co-founder of Queertopia Festival, whose latest book, which I absolutely adore, is called Love the World or Get Killed Trying. It's her first English language book. It comes out March 22nd. And it's such a poetic dissertation on isolation, trauma, objectification, and strangely enough, even the hope that there is some kind of divine intimacy out there.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Where are you? Well, we're honored to have you. Where are you located right now?
I'm in Berlin at the moment. I've been living here for 7 years, and I also sort of part-time live in Athens, and I'm planning on slowly but surely moving there completely.
Are you burnt out on Berlin?
I would say yes. It's a difficult city. I would say Northern Europe. I've lived in Northern Europe for a very long time, but I grew up in Northern California, and it's just like I'm done with it. Like the kind of coldness and kind of like never being open, never smiling. I'm okay. I can be a grumpy person, but if I'm grumpy, then I'm, energetically grumpy. It's not this boring kind of, if I'm angry and I show it, and I'm the only one showing it here always.
You're talking to a very energetic grump, although for being a grump, I'm pretty fucking positive, as is your book, strangely enough, because it's really heartbreaking in parts. And I think it's so important, especially having such an honest and disturbing, pretty much true to reality exposition on what it's like to not only grow up, but then fully come into your trans reality. Yeah, I don't find another equivalent out there. I think it's so important for that.
Yeah, it's exactly like, for me, okay, I wrote the book because I had to write it in a way. Like I felt it so strongly within me that it had to come out. But afterwards, I just realized that there's not, literature by trans women is anyways really new. And then any kind of literature that is in any way, experimenting with language, being poetic and form, that is, forget about it. That just doesn't really exist at the moment. Maybe like from very, very small presses. But in the mainstream, it's like either you have a very, say you're a white straight man, then you can write experimentally. But if you have an identity that's already a minority, then it's like, no, you should be writing something that's pedagogical, that is explaining very clearly and very cleanly. And I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I need to get out what actually is feeling inside of me.
In a very poetic way, and sometimes in a stream of consciousness way. I completely understand your dilemma. It's interesting in your book, you mentioned a lot of, and some of my favorite writers too, Clarice Lispector, not enough people know who she is. Of course, Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton, Violet LeDuc, that people also aren't very familiar, but more so even than them, what some passages And your book reminded me of the way that it was Henry Miller that was having run-on sentences that went for pages. And I think a piece of the most romantic writing ever. So it's interesting that you name check these women whose names also need to be known.
Absolutely.
It's just, I mean, I always find, like, see, whether it's even James Joyce or anyone, they're all kind of aliens in their own skin in society. I mean, they are real rebels and brave, and that's kind of the thread that connects all of this.
Well, and with James Joyce, Tim, writing books that you can't read until you're absolutely ready to commit to it, because otherwise you're going to be turned off by the first
but
page.
That's psychedelic through alcohol, and it's writing in tongues. It's insane.
1,200 pages of Ulysses. But like I want to bring up Violette Leduc because I think it's such a travesty that she's forgotten, because she's every bit as talented as Jean Genet. But because of like the way that patriarchy functions, it's like, oh no, like, first of all, like Jean Genet wasn't censored. Like Jean Genet was like, oh, he's writing about like homosexual love affairs. And it's like, oh, because it's written by a man, it's okay. But then when she did the same thing with lesbian love affairs, it was completely censored.
Well, and then also because she didn't look like Anais Nin or Simone de Beauvoir. She admitted how horrifying it was to live in her physical, unattractive reality, which is never held against men. I mean, let's face it.
Well, that's not true. Beckett had to leave. Beckett had to leave Ireland.
Hang on. We're the more beautiful species, no matter how we managed to get here. So.
No, I mean, Beckett, what I'm saying is it kind of, at the end of the day, in terms of just the human race, if you're a rogue, Beckett had to leave because the Catholic Church in Ireland was holding him down, even though he was, a straight white guy. He had to go to France because they weren't letting him speak his truth.
Well, American censorship, I mean, which it was Grove Press that got rid of anyway. So, I mean, look, the weirdo, the outlier, the different one that we've managed, and we have historically managed to get our music, our poetry, and our writing out there because we have to be the mouth for those that cannot scream.
And the important thing with Violette also, I feel, is that she was in no way bourgeois. So she was in this bourgeois world, or she wasn't until Simone de Beauvoir took her into it, this bourgeois world, but she never fit in. She was a complete misfit also within this, circle of writers and poets and musicians. They all thought that she was too crazy, too much, too working class, too feminine, too ugly, too everything, basically.
Yeah, I always find, Lydia, she always says to me, like, well, her positions haven't changed. Just, the infrastructure around her has changed. And so she's been attacked from every angle you can imagine over her whole career. And it's
never noticed.
Yeah, well, you don't give a shit. You keep on going.
I canceled everybody before they had a chance to cancel me. But go ahead, Tim. What were you saying?
Well, no, I'm just finding it interesting. I think because you do have, as John Waters talks about, as gay marriage becomes legal over the last 20 years in America. He's basically like, well, I'm for this, but there's also a side that's kind of like conformity to the conservative side of the planet. And if you're rogue, and you'll always be an outsider, no matter what the infrastructure, whatever it is. If you are a rogue, you're a rogue.
I find intelligence.
System,
I find intelligence the divide.
For sure.
And Alvina, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
So tell me.
We won't brag about our collective IQs here, but let's just say they're higher than the entire American fucking Congress.
At what point did you start in your life? Did you start feeling resistance towards just your general being? When did you get blowback for just your existence? I mean, as far as you can remember, later, what would you say?
Teenage years.
You're talking about me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Earlier.
Before you could talk?
That was around, let's see, the earliest memory of that was probably around 4 or 5, actually.
Where were you at the time?
In Petaluma in California, Northern California.
But correct me if I'm wrong, were you born in Sweden, or you have a Swedish parent, or?
My mom is Swedish. My dad is US American.
Okay.
And she moved to the US to be with him, which was a big mistake, but that's a whole other story. But
where in Sweden is she from?
From Gothenburg, or she was
Gothenburg.
born in Bollnäs. This is a tiny town, but they moved to Gothenburg when she was
Sure.
5.
Sure.
Let's
And
go
I
back
lived
to
in
being
Software until I was 14.
let's go back to being 4 or 5. You already know somehow intrinsically, a lot of us did, that we're freaking different.
Yeah. Mhm.
We
And
have that mark.
besides the whole gender thing, because the gender thing is one thing. There's that. Like, of course, I was, feeling somehow like a woman, whatever that means, but like definitely not like a man, and definitely not getting along with the boys. But the girls were also tough, because it wasn't like, and it's still not like that I, get along with all cis women or even all trans women, because like there is something more going on. I'm always, trying to question more, going a little bit deeper.
Well, because again, you are in search of a deeper understanding, a deeper intimacy, a true connection, no bullshit. Drop the masks, drop your defensive, fearful, build the walls that people build. I mean, that it's so important. There is a divide, and even though we are all tough, underneath it, why we do the things we do is because there is this soft center that is reaching out for others.
Absolutely. And that's why, for me, like, love and passion is such an important part of who I am. And it's interesting to me because the longer time has gone, the more men, straight men, go from just objectifying me to also falling in love with me. The problem is, because I'm a trans woman, they can't just, go for that love. Most of them freak the fuck out and don't know what to do with that. Yeah.
Would you say being objectified, that's traumatic? But I meet some women who say, it's like French feminism versus American feminism. Some of them say, I actually like being objectified as long as it's in the margins,
the right
way.
No,
as long as the subtext is respect.
Context.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah,
and about my mood and everything.
right.
I mean, in my book, I'm talking about Paris and being constantly, bombarded with men's objectifying comments. And it's like, I like to flirt. I will admit that. And I don't want the streets. Like, again, I was talking about why I don't like Northern Europe. That's another reason, because it's summertime. It's nice out. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit flirtatious. Maybe I want to, smile with somebody, talk a little bit. But here's none of that. But then in Paris, it's like, 100 times a day. And then it's like, who the fuck wants that? Who the fuck wants to be bothered 100 times a day? It's not sustainable.
Well, and also people don't realize that is what Paris is like. And that's what New York used to be like in the late 70s when I got here. Every 5 feet. And it didn't matter what or who you were, as long as you were female or kind of even, or it didn't matter, just as long as, because they were so desperate for an attention that they needed, yet also were insecure and repulsed by if you ever gave it to them. I mean, I had to learn to deal with it very early by using humor. So, you married? I'd say yes 7 times. You number 8, and I would be gone by the time, because I could have knocked them all out, but I've only got 2, not 8 arms.
Well, yeah. And in Germany, it feels like they think that the response to that is that if I ever talk to a woman in any way, that means that I'm a horrible sexist. And it's not the way that I view it. Like, I think there can be more communication. Like, one of the reasons I like Athens is there it feels slightly more balanced. Like, of course, I get approached a lot, but not all the time. Like, I can kind of, get through my day. And of course, every day there will be some interactions, but also many of them are not so horrifying or so horrible, because I feel that a lot of Greek guys kind of know more how to like approach you in a way that doesn't feel so intrusive.
Well, and that's why they call it Greek, darling.
I mean, Berlin. I mean, obviously, Germany has a lot of guilt, so it's always a little deformed in the way they approach a lot of these things, I find. But as we all know, you live in Berlin. It's so international at this point. I mean, when I walk around parts of Berlin, I hear English more than I hear anything else. Are you also saying that Berlin's a little too PC also? I mean,
yes, I would say that.
Just cold.
And
well, it's cold.
Protestant. Like, I feel that there's something about the prudency of Protestantism that just doesn't mix well with my personality. There's no boisterousness, there's no passion, there's no spontaneity, like all these things that make you actually feel like, or no losing control, like all these things that, of course, there are not every day do I need that, but I definitely need that as a part of my life. And it feels like a lot of Protestants, and especially Germans, kind of pretend that that is something that we don't need in life. That is like, you know, because it's not efficient.
I understand very well, because I am an outrageous flirt with, I mean, old women, men, children, especially cops who I like to get to cry because I can. But I understand the need. The flirting is, you know, it's good for the soul when you can have just a small interaction of just positive reaction. Hi, goodbye, wink,
there's
wink.
affirmation to it. There's a little affirmation.
Thank you, affirmation.
Yes. What about your Scando pagan roots? What kind of flirting do the pagan roots bring out? I mean, that's a little more direct and maybe a little more primal, right?
I mean, you would hope so, but you know, Protestantism really
took over. Yeah,
over Sweden. You know, it's not Viking country. That was 1,000. It's been 1,000. What, 1,200 years?
Yeah.
Almost?
Well, maybe.
Tim, you still feel a bit of Viking in you, don't you?
Totally.
Probably. I mean, besides the Northern Californian bit that's more open, there's might be a little bit of that too.
Maybe that's another issue you have in Berlin. Maybe you have some nautical DNA in you that's not being touched in
nautical
Berlin. And
as well. Nautical.
Near the seas. You need to explore the seas. So
the sea I need, the ocean I need. I grew up, you know, in Northern California, and that is a wild fucking ocean that will kill you if you.
Where in Northern California?
Further in than exactly.
Petaluma.
Petaluma. Where I usually know that Petaluma is exactly where again.
It's 1 hour north of San Francisco.
Hour north of okay.
Alvina, back to your book for a minute, because another part that's very beautiful about it, you go to Reykjavik, you go to Iceland, you're very into nature. A lot of it is about the healing, the reparation that you have to get by going to these waterfalls, the forest. You have to go in nature just for some peace in the day, in that week, as a healing ritual, and back really to your pagan witchy roots, because that's what we used to do back in our day, go to the forest and frolic. Oh, honey, one day we will go to the forest together and frolic.
And to be in peace, and just, you know, because a big part of this book is talking about all these interruptions from men, whether it was in the book, like hateful ones or sexual ones, to be somewhere where I could just be in peace with my thoughts and really write them down as they were. And then like starts almost this kind of love affair with the nature. Like, you know, I'm putting the waterfall on my skin, you know, the black volcanic lava sand like on my skin, like exfoliating the glacier, like really having this meditation also about like how nature is being destroyed. And because again, like this book is like, it's so important to me that it's not just about being a trans woman. It's like one of many themes that are intertwined within the book.
And again, nature doesn't judge. Nature is healing, and nature is being destroyed. So it's almost the reverse of what people, or the same that people have in their life. They might feel beautiful one minute, and then some asshole comes along and says something terrible, and then you're destroyed. So a piece of your nature is then neutered. So therefore, go into nature, which does not judge, and this is the thing about anybody who's like depressed or existentially nihilistic, is nature heals. And it's beautiful. And to be able to just have beautiful experiences which are out there, you can't overlook it. You have to go into it.
And it's this connection with eternity. And that's another thing, like when I'm talking about passion also, and the spontaneity and the danger of passion, it's the same thing. It's about this connection to eternity, and to not feeling that everything is so mundane and everyday. And that's the same feeling you can get when you're, especially in certain nature that is like Iceland. There's so many breathtaking things, so much nature that can like literally you can kill you, like from whether from heat exposure or cold, or all extreme elements are there.
Yeah, better to die under a raging waterfall than a raging alcoholic. Let's face it.
Or a raging volcano, because I was called Iceland, Ireland meets Hawaii. It's kind of interesting that way. What was your first heartbreak? I mean, did your family accept who you were or are, or whatever your process was? Were they accepting the whole journey throughout your
Did they
childhood?
get it? Did they recognize it?
Well, good question, Lydia, because exactly, no, they didn't understand. They didn't even like, because I am on good terms with my mother. My father is much more, well, my mother's a complicated case because we have a complicated relationship, but with the gender things, not so difficult. My father, however, yeah, we were not in touch so much. We might get in touch in a few months because I'm going to California for the book release. So we'll see. But what I wanted to say was this thing of not getting it, because that was the thing. They didn't understand that I was getting so bullied. They didn't understand even that I was different, because they definitely did not have any trans people around them. They didn't even have any gay or lesbian people around them. So their life was so hetero. So when I was, 5 and was idolizing, Catwoman, they were like, oh, well, of course. Like, and it's like, well, I'm supposed to idolize Batman. And don't you think that, like, the fact that also my sister and I were playing a game called Nature Girls, and I was so happy to be one of the Nature Girls. Like, if you just had like some trans or gay people in your circles, this would get picked up.
Or understanding in general that people are freaking different, and that's to be accepted and encouraged, not to be diminished.
Would you say some of these traumatic seeds that were planted through these experiences have also disrupted maybe some of your intimacy and relationships? No pun intended. Is there a little Stockholm syndrome there? Is it?
It always is. Like, when you experience childhood trauma, that's there when you're an adult as well.
For sure.
But the problem is that it has this added layer of being a trans woman in a violently heteronormative world. And if you, like me, have a desire towards men, that means that, I mean, straight men are the ones who desire me, and I desire men. And since they're desiring me, then those are the ones I'm paired with. So they desire me, but they are usually so afraid of that desire. And most of them keep it completely secret. So when that is like your entire romantic spectrum, it is so difficult to navigate. And that's what I try to get to in this book, that, like, I mean, transgender porn is one of the biggest porn categories around amongst heterosexual men. So they very much desire us. And I know how desired I am. But when it comes to relationships.
And by the way, darling, you're looking really gorgeous.
Thank you so much.
I mean, do you feel that you are now finally really as you should be, as you always wanted to be? Because it, like anybody, like anyone, but especially somebody that is trans, I mean, there is a big process in order to get where you want to be often.
Yeah.
And I think you're there now.
I would, yeah. I felt it kind of clicked like around 8 months ago, where I started to more or less pass completely, which means that, like, when I walk down the street, people don't go like, oh, she's trans. Oh, did you know that's a tranny? Like, I'm kind of ignored, but it has the, for me, I'm at peace with myself. But passing has this double-edged sword, because then I have, again, so many men who are interested in me and see a beautiful woman and are treating me like I'm this goddess. But then as soon as I tell them I'm trans, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've always wanted to try that. Can we go back to your place and fuck? And it's like, from being like this, person
goddess
the dream girlfriend, like so intelligent, so beautiful, oh wow, to being this object. And that's very painful to see how it clicks in like 2 seconds, literally.
Why don't you read us a passage from your book now?
Absolutely, yes.
With no further ado, Alvina Chamberland from Love the World or Get Killed Trying. Thank you. Please, let's have a reading.
So this is from the quite beginning of the novel, the first chapter. The temperature outside, cold, October. A wasp can crawl but not fly. My temperature inside, colder, December, darkest, the 21st. The wasp is hibernating to evade death. Am I saving my feelings for later? I don't know. No whimpers, no pleas. How can I stay so calm in such a predicament? I'm like a stick that thinks, how can I get stiffer? I'm trying to talk him out of it. How many times have I been here? I have lost count. I think to myself, not again. In a bed, on a sofa, on the subway, in my doorway, on an avenue sidewalk, never in a city park, but once in the back room of a shop. Again. My dear reader, you sense that I'm in danger, but since I'm not screaming, you don't know where to run to help. Again, I am strapped underneath the car that is driving sideways. What do I see on the ground? A dog's feces next to a rabbit's feces? I think so. I do not specialize in identifying the excrement of different species. Candy wrappers, rustle, rustle, cigarette butts. Yes, no, I was not smoking them. I was doing nothing wrong. I was not using their embers to burn my skin. I swear to God, they were already littering the ground when I was brought here. The labels, Prince, Marlboro, Gauloise, American spirits, most probably more. They wish I would shut my trap. They have no interest in making an advertisement out of this situation. Rape does not provide good publicity for their brands. Dear Prince, Marlboro, Gauloise, American spirits, please do not sue me. I am telling the truth. Your stubs were there. I am not making up their presence. It is not my fault they were getting stuck in my hair. Leaves, yes, leaves are on the pavement as well, very many of them. It is autumn, no, fall. Any budding flowers hidden underneath? Not till late February. The fatigued wasp buzzes with annoyance at having her perfect hibernation spot disturbed. The leaves make crunching noises, crunch, crunch, to interrupt the young man's heavy breathing, pant, pant, and awkward movements, waggle, wobble. And me? I am here as well, although I might as well not be. I murmur tiny of discomfort. A red brick juts into my left shoulder, scraping it coarsely each time he gyrates against me. A road made of rough concrete threatens to impair my clothes, reaching for the blood beneath my skin. A muddy puddle wets my right thigh, not frozen yet. That's my own body we're talking about. The young man's attempts at kissing feel as appealing as eating a sticky piece of food, cream cheese or moussaka, which has spent a full day exposed to the elements on a beach. His stubble grates like coarse grains of wet sand. The wind stings with no need for a metaphor, and the salt water is replaced by plenty of sweat mixed with the scent of axe instead of ocean. Axe, another brand which won't wish its name mentioned in connection with rape. Yes, commercials display acts making the girls go crazy for you out of their own free will. It's a lie. It's a lie. They're lying to you. Sue me, fine me, send me to prison. Stoning threats. Yes, yes, modern people do it on the internet. Rape acts. Too exhausting to constantly carry one inside of me. But straight from the sweatshop to the rape scene, the man is wearing a pair of Nikes. My entire body is behaving behaving like a scrunchie. He tries to stretch it out. He fails miserably. He is realizing that it's hard to take off the clothes of a person who's not cooperating, especially since he's a fumbling bundle of nerves. Huffing and puffing, he is groping and gasping, lacking all skill. I am no longer a stick. I start squirming like a trapped salamander out of water, dry and in hell. This is just so meaningless. Could he even manage to penetrate holes that are this closed? If he succeeds at forcing one open, he will use it as his own private toilet bowl, flushing down God knows what, and hoping he'll never see it again.
Thank you so
Wow,
much.
brutal, heavy.
Beautiful and beautiful. Poetic, traumatic, objectification, isolation, a desperate and divine desire for intimacy to be found somewhere at some time in the near future.
I have a question. I mean, I know growing up, some of the bullying that go on with kids who are now maybe diagnosed with Asperger's and the young people not even knowing what that is. Do you have compassion for some of the ignorance when it's novel, even for the people who are attracted to you and they don't even know what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they act in such perverted and fucked up ways, aren't they terrified about what their desires are, and aren't they struggling tremendously?
And the thing is, this is the problem I think that many straight men have, is communication and communicating about their emotions. So I have a lot of empathy with men who are struggling with their desire for me, if they at least are willing to communicate about this with me so we can have a conversation. But that is so rare. So even if I try to start on the point of empathy and try to get them to open up and be like, hey, I understand that you've encountered me, you feel attracted to me, you even maybe feel love for me, and you don't know how to tell your parents about this, you don't know how to tell your friends. Let's talk about it. Let's try to, have a conversation so that we can see how we can solve this in some way. But when I try that, usually they just block it off. And then it's difficult.
Well, and look, it's not even about telling their parents or telling their friends. It's they have to get over the fact that they view women in general as a certain type of hole.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a shutdown perversion right there. Like, oh, I'm attracted to part of this, but why doesn't it have this? Which sex is not just about a fucking certain hole or a pole in the body. I mean, that is the problem with most sex. If it's going to be reduced to that, go fucking jerk off in the bathroom, asshole. I mean, this is the problem. This is a main problem of still sexual segregation, training, fear, wall building, insecurity, and the impossibility of actually expressing true feelings for a woman or a trans woman or another man. This is still the blockade that a lot of men have.
Well, I know it was confusing for me. As a straight male growing up, the boys would be rewarded for their promiscuity, and the girls would be slut shamed by boys and girls, and that's confusing for the boys at that point. They don't even know, and so they're attracted to the promiscuous girls, and then they're feeling ashamed because this person's been ashamed, and they're connected at that point.
They're attracted to the promiscuous girls until they attracted to this is the teenage of your youth, attracted to the promiscuous girls a lot of times till they fuck them, and then they have to call them a slut because that's just the way the game works. And to me, slut, can you think of a better fucking term? What about goddess of sex, asshole motherfucker, 6 inches and less? Usually, give me a break.
Like the fact that like we are constructing like eroticism as something vulgar when it's something holy is just like,
we go back to sacred prostitution, which is what divine women are in one form or another, or have genetically encoded in our DNA, which doesn't think that sex is wrong and doesn't think that a grab on somebody's ass is a fucking sign of assault or rape. It's irritating. It's annoying. There are far bigger issues of the lack of of equality between the sexes, between and classism, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and this whole thing with the whole Madonna whore thing also, where like that's the thing. Like with me, for example, as a trans woman, it doesn't matter. Like if I've had sex with many more than 10 men, and yeah, I don't have to say how many men I've had sex
You
with.
gotta try them out, honey. Who's keeping count? I'm not. I mean, look, who's got that much ink?
It's many. Anyhow, my point is, even if it was 3, just by being a trans woman, they'd be like, this is not someone I'm supposed to have as a girlfriend. People are gonna, equate her with sex worker. People are gonna equate her as this whore. And so I need to find, some woman who's much more, dainty, who's much more
right,
shy,
so that they can have her and then go and have 100 other fucking slutty chicks that they want to fuck, because that actually delivers the kick and kink they need.
Exactly. So it's like, it's this sick thing of like actually really admiring what they see as the whore, while also, in other times despising it. And then also the worst thing about it is putting this onto women as well, so that women start to hate each other for this reason.
I'm curious if your father wasn't so accepting, and you've had a lot of unfortunately dysfunctional relationships,
well, bullyism as well as a youngster,
all the above, have you had in your eyes what you perceive as a functional, loving relationship yet that's honored what you're basically going for, and if so, what happened there? Or if not, would you recognize one if you had it?
I have one guy. He is. I have a problem sometimes with my ex-boyfriends. I speak about them as like, he was nice. It's like, but he's still nice. Like he still exists. Just because my ex doesn't mean. Anyhow, that's just me with language. No, he is very sweet, and that relationship was very nice and loving, and he's still in my life as a friend. But the problem was that he didn't tell anybody that he was dating me. So he was still hiding me. So it was a year and a half of a lot of love. We, it was semi-long distance. We met semi-regularly, but it would always be, he would come to Berlin.
Well, that's the perfect relationship in my eyes. Semi-regularly, long distance, great when it happens. And also, you can't expect, you have to be very thankful for whatever is great in any relationship. And the problem is most people just want them to go on for too long. That's where disappointment comes in.
And also, I agree with you completely. Long distance relationships are, for me, the perfect thing, because you get the intensity while also keeping your independence. Like, I don't understand this need for having somebody there every single day for every single action. Every single time you go on a trip, this person has to be the one you go on the trip with. Whew, like, that's just not how I envision my life, whether or not I have a husband.
Best if you have one in another country, honey. I'll recommend a few later. I don't know, maybe we can exchange numbers like that. Actually, yeah, a husband who is a wife, I don't want either of them, actually. I'm very happy with my own situation. And I think that more women need to learn to be their own lovers, because it has to start there. And in all of our free time, let's face it, we know what to do to ourselves, with ourselves. And if you don't, just come to Big Mama Lunch and I'll give you a couple of lessons in how to do that, take care of that situation right away.
Were you living in California right before Berlin?
No, Sweden. So
you were in Sweden. Okay.
Like a decade. So I got like a quite big dose of Swedish culture also.
Sure.
Like one of the things I think about when it comes to Greece, that it works for me so well, is that it has kind of the loudness and boisterousness of Californian culture, as well as the kind of severity and sort of depression and also judginess, actually, of Swedish culture.
Okay, all right.
So it's like a mixture of both. So it's like I come there and I'm like, this is like a combination of the things that when I'm in Sweden, I'm definitely way too US American. When I'm in the US, I'm definitely way too Swedish. And then when I'm in Greece, it's like, oh, people are suddenly understanding me.
But at least in Sweden or almost all of Scandinavia, which was the biggest supporter of my spoken word when I was doing it in the 80s and 90s, people read books. They're literate. They have to read books because it's dark and cold for half of the year. What else are you going to fucking do? And they have an appreciation of storytelling, stories, literature, and things like that. And so, and also tolerance to some degree, at least a pretense of understanding about sex. Okay, pretense. Okay, about understanding about it. But still, I mean, life everywhere.
What also works better for me in Greece is that straight men there are more in touch with their desire. So if they desire me, they're actually less neurotic about it than Swedish men are, even though Swedish men on paper are more progressive.
Well, that's so I always say that. Like like in the United States, for instance, Massachusetts versus Texas. Now, on paper, Massachusetts is very tolerant. It's actually very ethical about a lot of its rules. But you go out in the street, they're like, "Why are you talking to me?" And it's pretty conservative. I find Texas actually to be pretty warm, but then what they vote on paper is pretty fucking brutal. So,
well, but I mean, look, because there's rebels everywhere if you can find them. I mean, the other thing that's so confusing about the here and the right now is that a new Puritanism. And then on the other side of that, there's Cardi B and, Megan Thee Stallion. So we have like this, don't touch me. That's equivalent to rape. Don't look at me. Don't buy me a drink. And then you have wet ass pussy on the other side. And so where is the balance? I mean, this is a very confusing. And then you have the internet porn, which, ruins a lot of people's sex lives because it's just, cartoonish and ridiculous. But if you could find what you want, good luck, go for it. Don't think that's going to be real life. And then, so it's such a conundrum right now because, in a sense, almost the 70s coming out of the sexual revolution, there was a lot more tolerance, it seemed to me, both for pornography, for outsiderness, for otherness, for gay. Not even so much trans them because they were still because it was gay was okay, but we weren't that aware yet of we're getting there before it was.
Right. In Greece and Turkey, there was a lot of trans culture going on since the 50s, and Brazil and Argentina.
Right, because America is I mean, like a lot of places, other than the hotter countries, we're square.
Also, like it's about how to fight. Also, because some people just think that they're doing the right thing, but it's so wrong. Like I was gonna say, like, that it was my worst sexual experience, but it wasn't even a sexual experience because I didn't have sex with the guy, because the whole time, like walking home with him, he was just talking about how he'd really learned how important it is with consent, that every time you touch somebody, you have to ask right before you move your hand, in which I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't want to have sex with you. Like, this is not.
This is the 1950s. And also the thing is, when there's so much restriction, that eliminates intuition and communication without words. You should know whether or not somebody doesn't want it. And you should also be able to understand subtle hints. And also women should not be afraid or trans to make the first move, and then that might terrify the person as well. So it's still a very tricky situation, which is ridiculous. We're in 2023 here. Go back to the forest, pagan rituals, women frolicking, sex, drugs, and even banging on drums. Why not?
I mean, one of the criticisms of second wave feminism, even though it had to happen, the big victory was sexual freedom, but that comes also with, responsibility and risk. So you don't want the worst of all worlds, of which is just like basically this uptight fear of just
anything
being destroyed, where people have to be like, can I please like touch our fingers?
Right. But on the other side of that, there are so many natural born rapists. So this is also why it's important to me that everybody learns about protecting themselves physically and psychologically from the age of 6. or even younger when a lot of molestation or bullyism starts. So we need more preparation as humans in this still uncivilized and undeveloped world where technology has gone so far, but the human psyche is still regressing constantly and still being dominated by octogenarian assholes who want to eliminate fucking abortion, who want to take away rights we fought for. And in this instance, it's like, where the fuck next? And I agree. Athens, I may be joining you, honey.
Yes.
On a different, I'm digressing a little bit, but in terms of Swedish pop culture, do you prefer like Swedish bubblegum pop or Swedish death metal?
Define Swedish bubblegum pop.
I don't know. Isn't that like Army of Army of Lovers kind of? I mean, I'm just kind of.
I really hate fucking ABBA.
Isn't that isn't Army
ABBA's fun? ABBA's not good, but ABBA's fun. I think.
I think ABBA and the Bee Gees should go on a cruise ship together, and I might throw a Molotov cocktail. I'll just say it.
Well, it's not technically bubblegum, but it's well, the Swedish pop music versus.
Is it possible to choose neither? Because
it's very possible. Yes, it's
an answer I often give to one of Tim's questions. Neither.
That's fine. I accept it.
I choose neither.
I accept it.
I choose neither. Yeah. I want to talk about your voice for a minute, because you've also in the past done performances with voice. You have an incredible octave range. I think that your voice now is very developed. I mean, I saw some of your earlier performances which were much more radical improvisation. I don't know if they were experimental and far more intense. But I think that the reading that you just did and will do, it begs to be read exactly as you did it, which is with concern also for the emotion that's in it and the impact, which is also why I do workshops for how you wrote, how do you perform it.
Exactly. And I think that's something, unfortunately, that many writers miss because, well, some of them just don't have that talent. Let's just put that out there, that like having the talent for writing well doesn't mean that you're good at reading it. There's two separate things. But I wish that more writers would, like for me, when I read, I dive into each and every word in order to give it the exact character, flavor,
emotional impact,
and also musicality that was there when I wrote it. And that is such a vital thing to do. And I think it's a pity that many writers don't.
Well, it's why I give workshops in it. It's why I give workshops, and why I really love giving workshops in it, because I think, and especially for women or others, it's very important to have their words out there. So with that said, can we hear another passage, please, Mistress Alvina Chamberland? Thank you, darling.
Absolutely.
So please, bless us.
A cold sore starts growing inside my mouth because little Miss Sore Throat demanded to have a cellmate inside her jail. I'm getting lost in another mood spell that renders the preceding moments useless and seemingly unattainable. I start thinking of the boy from the day before yesterday. I wonder, is he another person with experiences in the range of 75% to 25%, but no experience of 100 or 0? I catch myself mid-sin. I vowed to banish him to a place called Forgotten. I have broken a promise to myself. It is better to break promises to yourself than others. And whether the answer to my question is yes or no, or I don't know, I can still feel relieved by the reality of it too late now. Meanwhile, I am playing another sonata on the grand piano of love affairs unable to come to fruition. It is the mute swan song of eggs being eaten by foxes, by snakes, by otters. It quivers with each and every up and down that never saw the light. Indeed, all my loves continue to live their own lives within the realms of my subconscious. From time to time, they present themselves in my dreams as a reminder that they're still alive and well. There are love affairs to be had with people. There are love affairs to be had with cities. There are love affairs to be had with nature. Nature has never told me I'm too intense. Nature, I'm not glorifying you. It is impossible to exaggerate the truth. And the truth is, and the truths are, you bring me closer to solving the mystery of my chronics, anxieties, emptinesses, illnesses. I am not being overly dramatic. I must do whatever it takes to prevent my life from being dominated by awful social games like hanging out in groups of people I've only ever hung out with in groups of people, therefore never getting near anyone's maskless existence. That would be the death of me. Save me, nature. Save me from a bad-natured fate named a woman named Alvina, killed by a woman named Alvina. So this is in the very, very ending of the book. Oh, can one feel apart and unhappy for too long to ever be together and happy? Perhaps this pain is sadness and loneliness. Perhaps it is something darker than that. 33% of us have tried to die by own hand. My theory is that lack of love kills more trans girls than punches, stares, stabs, dysphoria, rapes, gropes, guns, and bullying put together. Picture yourself as a person trapped in a crack where you can easily fuck 5 guys a night without recalling the last time you touched was intimate. Even our murderers are the men who secretly screw us and deem it less shameful to openly shoot us. Martyrs of freedom, liberation's got no room here. Until they who are everywhere and nowhere come out, there may be no way out.
Thank you so much. That was and will remain Alvina Chamberland from Love the World or Get Killed Trying.